Sunday, so it was Sunday hours for the tube. It was 11:45 at night. I had to be on Earls Court by 12:30 to make my last train, so I was in a bit of a rush to get home. I was hurrying down Shaftesbury Avenue to make my way to the tube when these 4 or 5 policemen crossed over the road and were visibly approaching me, and one of them was going like this, gesturing towards me. So I went up and I asked, what's the problem, what's the matter? And one of them behind, he didn't answer straight out. One of them behind said to me, he said, "We can do you, we can. Oh, we can do you for them wristbands, like that. You can't wear that." Another one said, "You can't walk around looking like that." Another one said to me straight afterwards, said, "Is that bare breasts you've got on that t-shirt? You can't wear that, that's an offence, that is." To which I responded, I said, "Oh, well, I'll cover them up." And I put my arm across the breasts at that moment. Then one of them said, "What have you got written on the back of your shirt?" And I thought, oh dear, they're not going to like this. So they asked me to turn around. I had no option but to turn around. One of them said, "I have to tell you, you're wearing an illegal t-shirt." I said, "Well, how is this an illegal t-shirt? I've bought it, it's not been stolen." I said, how is this illegal? He said, "Wearing that t-shirt is an offence." I said, "Well, other people that I've seen wear it. Lots of other people I've seen have worn this." He said, "Well, I'm telling you that's an offence, now take it off now." Now, as you can see, the way I'm dressed at the moment, I've got wristbands up and down my arms. It would have meant undoing about 10, 12 straps to even be able to free up the arms to be able to take the thing off anyway, physically. I said, "Well, if it's an offence, I'll cover up the word." So I then put my arm across the back, covered up the word, had an arm across the front, covered up the word on the front, and went to walk off. As soon as I did that, one of them said, "Oi, stop right there, come back here." And they were quite threatening about it. And one of them said, I'm arresting you." I said, "What's the charge?" He says, "I don't know yet, but we'll find out as soon as we get back to the station." The van was there like that straight away. In the police station, I said I was agreeable to take the shirt off and turn it inside out and leave of my own accord. But that wasn't an option, because as soon as I took the wristbands off and took the shirt off, the arresting officer grabbed the shirt out of my hands and said, "Right, I'm having that as evidence." And they said, "We're arresting you for profanity under the 1839 profanity law." I wasn't imprisoned, but they did try and add on an extra charge, which was displaying threatening and abusive language, which might or could make persons in the vicinity feel threatened for their own safety, which had a maximum penalty of 6 months in prison. They were having a good go at it, put it that way. They were having a good go. Fortunately, that charge did get thrown out, but the profanity one stuck, and I was fined £90. Well, I contacted Vampirotica first of all. I went to their store, their stall at the Astoria, and they said as far as they were aware nobody else had been arrested for it. Eventually they got some of the band members who I then chatted to. Danny was very, when he saw the charge sheet, he was very angry about it. He was very angry. He said they can't fucking do that. He was very angry. And I was very grateful for his reaction, actually. I was very, very grateful for that. Oh, come on, where the hell is it? That's the one. It was just basically a cartoon I drew at the time when the court case was going on. I was just frustrated over the way that I felt my human rights had been violated. And it was my way of expressing that in a cartoon, you know. What it is basically a policeman hitting a black metal fan over the head and saying, "I do find thee guilty of blasphemy of the most profane nature, let thy sacred and holy truncheon administer God's religious correction and rejoice in the mercy and forgiveness of the Lord." And he's stamping all over the grave of in loving memory of freedom of speech and religious choice. There are other graves here as well. There's one RIP, Civil Liberty, lest we forget Salman Rushdie, RIP, humorous artistic integrity and self-expression. And the bottom caption is, "Jesus is not a CUNT."
We had problems with the marketing campaign for the release of the album because we had a topless lady and wanted to do fly posting, so we had to kind of rejig our fly posting campaign. The problem with the topless lady was mainly, it was fairly Europe-wide, but more German, bizarrely enough. The UK didn't really like it because the fly posting campaign was done in Westminster, in London, and obviously Westminster Council take a very dim view of things like that, and especially when it's obscene material. Germany weren't mad keen on it because they saw it as restricting the places where the CD could be placed. But places like Japan don't blink an eye, neither do the States, but other places like sort of Spain and Italy as well weren't a bit wobbly on it, put it that way. But in the end, people have to turn a blind eye and get the material out there.
And we had big problems trying to convince our UK distributor, Pinnacle, to take the release seriously. For Germany, we had to sign a disclaimer saying that neither Cacophonous nor Cradle of Filth were neo-Nazis or had neo-Nazi sympathies because of what was happening in Norway with the murders and with the political affiliations that existed at the time.
One of the things that we did experience quite a lot from the States and from places like Portugal and Spain was the fact that we used to get a lot of death threats. We got quite a lot of death threat letters, one in particular that was written in blood that came from Portugal that was quite threatening, that was about, oh, I can't even remember when the band went over there. I think that was mid-1996. And they went over there and we got this letter in blood saying, "What do you think you're doing? You're letting these people come into our country. Blasphemy," all this kind of thing. At first it's funny, but after a while you think, are these people serious or are they just dangerous?
Over the years, with the change of editorships with Metal Hammer and Kerrang, their treatment of black metal has been perhaps a bit more subjective. And they've treated it with a bit more respect than they did to begin with. I don't think people perhaps, especially a lot of fans who perhaps weren't listening to the music 10 years ago, they don't realise how difficult it was to approach these magazines and hope to have coverage. I mean, yes, Kerrang! Metal Hammer ran, reviews and features in the early days, but I always found that their attitude was a bit derisory. In other words, they were coming from a, "Oh, this is a bit of a joke, so we'll treat it with kid gloves and we'll just make it a bit of fun." And as the scene was militant at the time, I always had a problem with magazines that did treat black metal as a fun thing, because for me it wasn't fun, it was life. Now today, obviously, it's changed, but certainly then it was an uphill task to get these people to give us proper coverage. And Terrorizer really is perhaps in the main the only magazine that really has its finger on the pulse of what extreme music is. So we've there's always been a close tie between the two, between the label, even the band and the magazine. I think initially the Cradle were a band that people were like, wow, especially when the first album came out, it was word of mouth. A lot of people were like saying, "You must hear this band," the reviews in the underground were like, "This is totally amazing," and of course that whole crossing over of genres. You had people in goth clubs wanting to play Cradle of Filth at goth clubs, and the interest grew and grew.